Stevie and I, although not quite as well defined, were estranged, we're not living together, we'd, for all intents and purposes, broken up.
The secrets of Fleetwood Mac's meteoric climb to prominence have remained hidden for decades, until this moment. Fleetwood Mac's Lindsey Buckingham, a key member of the band, has spoken out. From his time working with Stevie Nicks to the making of the seminal Rumors album, Lindsey Buckingham reveals the behind-the-scenes tale from his perspective. While both were still in high school, Lindsey Buckingham met Stevie Nicks in Northern California. These two groups of teenage souls had little more in common than a love of music in the late 1960s. Although they didn't spend much time together at first, Stevie and Lindsey's friendship blossomed as she transferred to her school in her final year. Although Stevie could play guitar, she had not yet discovered her songwriting voice, whereas Lindsey was already quite engrossed in music. After Lindsey joined a band named Fritz after high school, their paths finally began to intersect. A random suggestion from one of the band members led Stevie to consider singing with them. Fritz was the name of the first band. Yes, Fritz, she consented, and they began performing together all over the Bay Area shortly after. Before Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix, Fritz was already a major act, although they were still in high school. Fritz, however, disbanded in the early 1970s due to the band's inability to gain traction in the wider music business. Lindsey, Stevie, and Fritz were at a fork in the road. They were both worried about the future of their music, which they had put a lot of time and energy into. Instead of giving up, they took a life-altering decision. They became a duet called Buckingham Nicks and relocated to Los Angeles in the hopes of being famous. During this time, they also began a love connection, which brought a new level of mystery and intensity to their partnership. Their sole studio album as a duo, Buckingham Nicks, came out in 1973. It failed to make money, but it got the attention of those who mattered. The album highlighted Lindsey's distinctive guitar playing and Stevie's developing abilities as a composer, despite the numerous obstacles they overcame, including financial constraints and rejections from record labels. During this period, they performed at low-key venues, just scraping by financially, but they never wavered from their belief in their music. Despite all the obstacles, this part of their story was essential to how they would go on to succeed. In love and in music, they were perfecting their craft, developing their sound, and learning to collaborate. They were oblivious to the fact that their lives were about to undergo a dramatic transformation. In 1974, Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks reached a turning point in their careers. They were both fighting for survival in the cutthroat Los Angeles music market when Buckingham Nicks failed to provide the breakthrough they had anticipated. A fortuitous meeting at Sound City Studios would then alter the course of events. During Lindsey's time at Sound City, Fleetwood Mac drummer Mick Fleetwood dropped by. Mick was immediately captivated by Lindsey's distinctive guitar sound after listening to him on the Buckingham Nicks album. Since guitarist Bob Welch had recently left the band, Fleetwood Mac was undergoing some changes. After listening to Lindsey perform, Mick was certain he had discovered the ideal new member for the band. Mick made an audacious offer to Lindsey, saying, "Join Fleetwood Mac." However, Lindsey had no interest in leaving Stevie behind because the two of them had formed an inseparable musical and emotional relationship. Therefore, Lindsey made it plain that Mick needed to take Stevie with him if he wanted her. Taking the plunge seemed a little risky at first. With their already established sound, Fleetwood Mac underwent a radical transformation with the addition of two new members, particularly a female vocalist. However, after discussing the matter with Christine McVie and the rest of the group, they decided to bring Lindsey and Stevie on board. It would turn out to be a pivotal choice for the band. The record was pivotal in getting Buckingham Nicks to join Fleetwood Mac, even though it hadn't been a commercial success. Their abilities shone through, showcasing Lindsey's guitar skills and Stevie's unique vocals, proving they could enrich the band with something fresh. With Lindsey and Stevie being officially part of Fleetwood Mac, the 1975 self-titled album was released. The album was so successful that it ushered in a new chapter for the band. Hits like Rhiannon and Landslide, which Stevie wrote, went on to become classics. Lindsey, meantime, brought a new generation of listeners into the band's sound with her innovative guitar skills. However, there were some bumps along the road. Fleetwood Mac's music underwent a dramatic transformation with the addition of Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks. Fleetwood Mac's earlier work drew from more conventional rock and British blues. But with Lindsey and Stevie on board, there was a surge of new enthusiasm and perspective. Fleetwood Mac, the band's debut album released in 1975, was a watershed moment that paved the way for the members to achieve stardom on a global scale. The members of the band hit it off right away. The addition of Lindsey's distinctive guitar playing and Stevie's eerie vocals harmonized wonderfully with the band's pre-existing members. The addition of Christine McVie's songwriting and piano work deepened the sound, while Mick Fleetwood's drumming provided the foundation. John McVeigh's consistent bass line served as the foundation for their ever-changing sound. They created an infectious sound by combining rock, pop, and folk. Lindsey was instrumental in developing the sound of the band. When compared to other bands of the day, Fleetwood Mac stood out because to his meticulousness and skill in creating complex arrangements. In his own time, he would layer guitar parts, experiment with new sounds, and encourage the band to go in new areas. His guitar work was the main attraction on songs like Monday Morning and I'm So Afraid, which let his talent stand out. A huge hit was the self-titled album by Fleetwood Mac. Songs that Stevie wrote and sang, such as Rhiannon and Landslide, were immediately popular. The album gained the band new admirers thanks to its well-produced rock and pop sound that appealed to a wider audience. The band members were also rising to stardom, so it wasn't just about the music. Their personalities, relationships, and style all had a role in their rising stardom. Pressure, though, came along with celebrity. Despite the band's success, tensions were rising behind the scenes. Relationships amongst members of the group became increasingly difficult as their fame increased. Particularly Lindsey's zeal in the studio was known to occasionally irritate the other members. Despite all that came their way, the band remained resolute in their pursuit of music and the momentum they had already established. What followed would propel the group to even greater success, but each member would pay a personal price. For Fleetwood Mac, the 1976 recording of Rumors was a period of profound psychological turmoil, interspersed with moments of artistic genius. Despite the band's success, personal connections were crumbling behind the scenes. After many years of working together musically and romantically, Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks recently split up. Even greater spotlight was cast on the band after the divorce of bassist John and keyboardist Christine McVie. Even worse, Mick Fleetwood was coping with his own set of problems, such as the end of his marriage. Not only did their private struggles influence their music, but they also affected their personal life. Rumors songs were unfiltered expressions of the band's pain and strife. The band overcame the emotional toll of making what is widely considered to be the best rock album of all time. Stevie Wonder was the intended recipient of Lindsey's Go Your Own Way song. It had lyrics that were bitter and rebellious, expressing his thoughts over their split. But Stevie's Dreams was her reaction, a gentler, more introspective take on their breakup. Each songwriter laid their emotions open in these songs, turning them become more than just popular hits. They were musical conversations between themselves. Christine McVie also made important contributions. Composed in the midst of her turmoil, the hopeful message of "Don't Stop" encouraged listeners to move on from the past and focus on the future, a sentiment that struck a chord with the band and their fans all around the globe. The members of the band were aware that the music they were doing had something unique, despite the strain. For the duration of recording the album, they were able to temporarily set aside their differences. It wasn't simple at all. It appeared like everything would come apart at one point, and there were conflicts and lengthy recording sessions. The end product, nevertheless, was a work of art that managed to convey the band members' honest feelings, while simultaneously producing high-quality, memorable music. The narrative was far from done, though. even after this masterpiece was created. Fleetwood Mac's meteoric rise to fame was fueled by the enormous success of Rumors, but the price of fame was high. Because of the album's success, the band was the subject of widespread media attention. Their relationships, among other things, were the center of attention. The band members, including Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks, found it more and more challenging to keep up with their personal and professional relationships. The band began their punishing tour schedule after Rumors. The group's pre-existing stresses were magnified throughout the tour. They attempted to handle their problems while performing in front of sold-out venues around the clock. Their classic songs were powered by raw emotions, and the constant pressures of touring only served to heighten the tension. The tensions that had been building between them for some time were more apparent as a result of their prolonged close quarters. The pressures of being both the creative engine behind Fleetwood Mac and a successful individual in his own right were too much for Lindsey to bear. Working together every day made it hard for him to move on from the unresolved sentiments left over from his split with Stevie. As they played songs like Go Your Own Way and The Chain live, their energy was a mashup of fervor and pent-up rage. It was emotionally taxing, yet made for riveting performances. For John and Christine McVie, it was the same story. They continued to work together after their divorce as if nothing had changed, despite the fact that their relationship was far more difficult than it appeared. Every member of the band felt the effects of this forced intimacy. They had no time to recover or put the past in the past. Cracks were appearing beneath the surface, despite their best efforts to keep it together. The group endured tremendous strain from both their fans and the music industry, on top of their own personal problems. Everyone was expecting Fleetwood Mac to keep releasing successful albums after they made such a great one. Yet these expectations were so heavy that they crushed. Rumors' success was both a boon and a bane because it made it difficult for them to compete. It seemed inevitable that something would crack as tensions rose. In 1987, the fissures within Fleetwood Mac had grown wider, and Lindsey Buckingham's personal and professional conflicts had finally reached a boiling point. The strain was too much to handle. In spite of the band's continuous output following Rumors' triumph, he couldn't ignore the mounting emotional tension, particularly between himself and Stevie Nicks. Even though they had a productive professional relationship before, it had turned poisonous. The disagreements went beyond mere musical tastes. They pertained to matters of the heart. It was not an easy choice for Lindsey to make to go from Fleetwood Mac. The band's music and success were both influenced by him, who had been a driving creative force. However, he chose to move aside in 1987, following the release of Tango in the Night. A number of factors, including his desire to explore other creative endeavors, his relationships, and the music industry's incessant demands, led him to this conclusion. He shocked fans and fellow band members alike when he infamously quit days before the band was about to go on a world tour. Particularly affected by Lindsey's departure was Stevie Nicks. Their relationship had always been a tangled web of affection, animosity, and mutual regard. But by the time Lindsey made the decision to depart, their shared past had rendered continual collaboration untenable. Despite their disappointment, Mick Fleetwood and the rest of the band decided to continue performing without him. Rick Vito and Billy Burnett were the guitarists whom Fleetwood Mac brought in to replace Lindsey, but the relationship between them was never the same. Lindsey shifted his attention to his solo career after departing from Fleetwood Mac. As a solo artist, he was free to experiment with sounds and concepts that didn't mesh well with Fleetwood Mac's sound, which was a departure from his band work. His distinctive guitar playing and production approach were on full display on albums like Out of the Cradle, which allowed him a level of independence he hadn't felt while playing in the band. Although Lindsey's narrative didn't conclude with her departure from the band. In 1997, after Lindsey Buckingham had been working on his solo career for 10 years, the band reformed for a live reunion record and tour called The Dance. Fans have waited a long time for this, hoping to see the original lineup reunited. Mick Fleetwood, John McVie, Christine McVie, Lindsey and Stevie Nicks regrouped despite their tumultuous past. With The Dance going on to become one of the best-selling live albums of all time, the reunion was a smashing success both critically and commercially. It appeared as though past hurts had healed, at least superficially, and the chemistry remained. Despite coming back together, the band's long-running internal strife persisted. The complicated dynamic between Lindsey and Stevie continued to cause friction. Despite their professional success in working together, the underlying tensions remained. Even though they were still under emotional strain, Fleetwood Mac kept touring and releasing music in the years that followed. In 2018, Lindsey's dismissal from Fleetwood Mac was the last straw. It was generally rumored that his problems with Stevie Nicks had reached a breaking point. However, the actual reasons for his resignation were never completely explained. After the fact, Mick Fleetwood revealed that keeping the band together was the driving force behind the decision to fire Lindsey. The blow came as a shock to Lindsey. Being kicked out of the band seemed like the worst kind of betrayal after everything they had gone through together. Lindsey Buckingham's transparency on his tenure with Fleetwood Mac has been noticeable in the past few years. Lindsey has spoken proudly of the music they made together, despite the difficult relationships and painful breakups. He knows they had a lot of problems, especially with his complicated relationship with Stevie Nicks, but he also appreciates what they achieved. Some of the band's finest material, according to Lindsey, was born out of the members' internal conflicts. Lindsey has expressed both affection and annoyance while discussing his connection with Stevie. The legacy of Lindsey Buckingham's journey with Fleetwood Mac is a history of music, love, and strife. His impact on the music industry is indisputable, even though he quit the band. The legacy of Lindsey Stirling will live on, whether she performs with Fleetwood Mac or not. If you like this video on Fleetwood Mac and other rock icons, please subscribe, like, and comment.